Asili, you are so selfish. You're too broad with your thinking. Stop overthinking every little thing. Seely, you are so selfless. You always put others before yourself. You care too much. You always want to hear what someone has to say, no matter how much they may have hurt you. I didn't raise you this way. These are some of the things I have heard while at Buxton. I have learned that what people think about you doesn't speak to who you really are. Only you can do that. It took me such a long time to be comfortable with who I am and all the different aspects of myself. I went through most of my childhood feeling different in certain ways because I would feel things that other people didn't necessarily feel. I understood things that most people couldn't. I didn't think the way people around me did, and that made me so different. Even to some of my family, it was weird to see the complexity of adult situations that I could take in, understand, and find a solution for, that they couldn't even do. Maybe this was because I was given different aspects of my parents that made me vulnerable, yet different, in a way that only I can understand. I learned to embrace the differences that made me who I am, and allowed myself to share them with others. When people told me I couldn't do something because of my weight, size, class, or race, I proved them wrong. I made it a point to make sure I rose against every negative thing I heard in life, no matter how much it may have torn me down. I gave some of this energy to my class when I came to Buxton. As many freshmen do, we were growing into ourselves and finding our stride. Not always did everyone understand that, and it made us feel less than effective at times. It made me even feel worse because I was a black girl going to a majority white school and had to fight that battle, plus this one. I channeled much of my time and energy into making sure that we, as a class, did our best and took care of each other and our community. This wasn't always easy. We would fight, argue, cry, and laugh with each other. I think it was because we knew, at the end of the day, if no one had our backs, we had our own. We knew that we had to prove people wrong as a class, but we also had to prove our individual demons wrong. We had to get our revenge this way. The album, Revenge the Dreamers, reminds me of my class of 2020. Not only are we graduating during one of the craziest times in world history, but we have grown together and through a rough 4 years. We have overcome so many obstacles and doubts. We have been called the worst class by some, and the best class by others. We have gone through incredibly tough moments and also moments of great happiness and togetherness. But even in our hardest times, we overcame so much pain, grief, and disappointment. Many of these things brought us close together and made each of us stronger as a result. I know that I'm going to keep my promise and make sure I never give up on myself because I know my class never gives up on me, no matter how much they may annoy me at times. We all dream big and have so many exceptional things we plan to do in life, and we encourage each other to go out and do them. We are dreamers, inventors, engineers, artists, and so much more. We rise against the odds, and our revenge is to see our dreams come true.
I was recently on a hike and I was thinking about endings, because finishing high school is an end for me. I was thinking about happy endings within stories and how much messier real-life endings usually are. When I was a child, I was obsessed with stories, both telling them and listening to them. I was intrigued by the ups and downs of the narrative. The angry, the sad, but then in the end, the happy resolve. That is the central illusion of childhood, that we will grow up and we will experience sadness and anger and all the emotions in between, but in the end, we will be happy. That's one of the things that I loved so much about childhood. The purity behind the belief of absolute happiness. I mean, look at the story of Cinderella. I'm assuming everybody knows the story. If you don't, I'm sorry, I'm not going to explain it. But basically, she grows up having a tragic upbringing, and then she gets married to a handsome prince. That's where the story ends. But there I was hiking up this hill on a very hot day, and I was seriously thinking to myself that Cinderella probably got divorced because she caught her prince cheating on her. Her stepmother was an alcoholic who resented Cinderella because she secretly blamed the little girl for her father's death. But now she's a great person, sober, and helping Cinderella through a very harsh divorce. Cinderella's two stepsisters, damaged from their drunken mother, got caught up in drugs, one of them overdosing and the other going to rehab because of the death and becoming a successful businesswoman. I made this up, obviously. But the point is, there was no happily ever after to the story. I'm not trying to be a pessimistic person. I swear there will be a happy end to my speech. I'm just saying that there is no 100% bad or good ending when referring specifically to the loss of my senior spring and graduation, not to the whole pandemic or everything else that is going on, because that's way too big a topic to cover right now. The good part of this ending is that I will be connected to my senior class for the rest of my life, whether I want it or not. We are bonded because of our collective grief, sadness, and happiness. We are bonded because we grew up into almost adults together. We are bonded because of the years prior and this year and what we are going through together and individually. And here and now, we are bonded because we are graduating via YouTube during a world pandemic, and frankly, so much more. So, if I see any of you in 30 years, even if we haven't spoken since graduation, I'll be having a coffee date for sure. Thank you very much.
I spent 4 years at Buxton. In many ways, I have changed. I encountered new friends, some have gone. I broke my wrist in an accident. However, I'm still alive. Nothing is permanent. As time goes on, nothing can escape from the end. When I was alone during this special time, I thought a lot about the meaning of life. I think the significance of life is not how much you own, but how much you dedicate to others. One thing people always seek is the eternal life. One thing people are most afraid of is death. But we cannot find a thing that exists forever. For individuals, the sky and the earth are the longest existence they can recognize. So they wish their lives, love, and achievements can be permanent like the sky and the earth. However, the sky and the earth also have limited lives. Just from our perspectives, theirs are much longer. To tell a story, a famous governor retired when he was old. He owned a lot of wills because of his achievements. However, he was afraid that his offspring would squander the wills. He decided to build a house with the best wood because he saw that a house could stay for a long time. He supervised the craftsmen every day, since he was afraid that they would steal the expensive wood needed to preserve the house. One day, a craftsman said to him, I have built houses over half of my life. Houses are not always destroyed, but they always change owners. The governor understood that everything he had would disappear one day. Therefore, I want to say, the sky does not exist itself. The earth does not exist for itself. They abandon their private concerns for others. Because of that, they can last for a long time, though not forever. One part of us can remain like the sky and earth. Not our wills, not our houses, but our spirit. The spirit of dedicating ourselves for others. This kind of spirit can benefit our community and our children and remain in their mind.
Where do I begin? I remember who I was when I first arrived at Buxton. That day is crystal clear in my mind. It was a token of my newfound independence. I had the privilege of a new beginning. I remember re-meeting my first friend at Buxton, for we had known each other long before. I remember seeing my room for the first time and thinking, this is where I'm going to live for a while, and I was so excited. I remember the butterflies in my stomach that traveled with me in the car, decided to stay for the first week of my arrival. I remember my first Buxton brunch and my love for waffles. I remember all the upperclassmen and faculty that took me under their wing. I remember meeting the people in my class for the first time and feeling so grateful to be in their presence. I remember my first dance of many at the theater in Ford, not knowing how to dance. I remember learning the secret to dancing is that nobody knows how to dance. You just have to let your pride go. And after I learned that, I danced everywhere there was music. I remember all the embarrassing things I've said in hopes to impress the people around me, and then coming back as a sophomore and having our first welcome back meeting with the piece of advice to hold space for the newcomers for acting the way we all once did. I remember trying on all the different personas and outfits and behaviors throughout the years, trying to find mine, and all the walks of confusion and frustration because I hadn't found my place. I remember all the gut-wrenching mistakes I've made and eventually learning to do the right thing even if I'm scared. I remember every room change and the feeling of a fresh start in a new space and all of my family members unsure about which building I live in now. I remember riding bikes with my gatehouse friends in my sophomore spring and feeling sweet release for the first time that year. I remember rebuilding myself after my sophomore year and surrounding myself with the people I call my bestest buds. I remember finally feeling cool my junior year and dyeing my hair for the first time. I remember warm nights at the reflection pools and feeling so alive sitting on those concrete beds under the stars with the people I love next to me. I remember my heart fluttering on that Saturday. We all walked to Dunkin' Donuts in the blistering cold, holding hands to stay warm. I remember waking up so early in the morning my junior spring and all of us running to the cow patties a couple of days before graduation and holding on to those moments before saying goodbye to some of my closest friends. I remember coming back my senior fall and already feeling as though I've made it. I've experienced many full circle moments this year that brought back all of these memories. They also assured me that I'm ready to take the tools that I've developed over the years and run with them. And as I get ready to leave, I feel so confident in the rising senior class that they will guide Buxton with compassion and resiliency. And finally, I sit in my room here today in front of only myself, soaking in the glory of accomplishing my first of many milestones. And what a gift it has been to be a part of Buxton. I will remember this, despite how weird it is.
When I first came to Buxton, I was a medium-sized, slightly scrawny, geeky black Christian teen, maybe a little like Steve Urkel. My parents are incredibly hardworking, focused on their son's success, overprotective, and politically conservative. Buxton was quite a shock. Almost everyone was liberal and eccentric, with their unusual hair colors and clothing styles. I decided to ignore the social aspects and focus on academics, and I was wrong, but that was okay, because I wasn't allowed to do that, and over time I feel I truly became part of the community, and more fully myself, and comfortable in my own skin. Since this was the first time I had been away from my family, as a coping mechanism I clung to the beliefs I grew up with. I might even have been a bit aggressive about it, but my opinions must have been of interest because during my first 2 years, I was frequently asked my thoughts on various controversial topics. Because my way of viewing the world was so different, I frequently felt out of place, even rejected. I definitely lost out on a lot of potentially good relationships and friendships. It was actually kind of funny. In many ways, I was finally a typical teenager, feeling like I didn't fit in and as if no one understood me. That first year, the swing by the new building became my best friend. I went there when I needed to think, was anxious, or just frustrated. There, I made the decision to engage in non-academic activities where I met people who talked with me about my beliefs and accepted me as I was. As time went on, I adjusted. I toned down my aggressive, defiant emotions and actions. I got closer to people and discovered Buxton was more varied than I had assumed. People on the right, on the left, and even in the middle. They helped me find better ways of expressing my beliefs and how to coexist in the Buxton community. My views on things such as healthcare, education, and government assistance softened. Slowly but surely, my defensiveness faded away as I got caught up in the hustle and bustle of the community. Over time, I found my niche with the POC Union, the many weekend dances, and West African dancers and drummers. Buxton gave me the opportunity to explore the much wider world and clarify my identity. And I learned to continue to learn, to focus on the here and now. I know my parents love me, and I was used to living by their rules. They wanted academic opportunity for me and wanted me to be exposed to a wider worldview, but not influenced by it. But I was influenced, and I did change, perhaps not in ways anyone at home or Buxton could have expected. Most dramatic was a spiritual awakening and choice to convert to Judaism, a story way too long and complex to detail here. Because why wouldn't going to an elite boarding school inspire me to become a Black Jew? This last year at Buxton held more difficulties than just COVID-19. Developed a variety of health issues and went head to head with my parents on various issues, including my conversion. I honestly think that they are mostly concerned about how society would treat me as both Black and Jewish. Hello, Sammy Davis Jr. As I've gone through these changes, I've developed personal relationships I can depend on. My friends and I have learned to support each other through tough times. It is the deep sense of community that makes Buxton special. And now I have to take the support, strength, growth, and maturity that Buxton has nurtured in me and find my way forward without my dear friend that's sewing near the new building and the relationships that will no longer be dashed down the hall or in the next building. I hope that as I move forward through life, I will always find good friends and a swing of my own in difficult times. For now, I leave Buxton as a medium-sized, slightly muscular, geeky, Black Jewish adult. Thank you for all this opportunity and the lifelong gifts.
My childhood was filled with the constant of a sibling above and a sister below. My parents tried their best to create a stable environment, but we moved around a lot. I never got the chance to settle. Schools lasted for 2 years and then changed. With the constant shifting, it was difficult to truly connect to my peers, to a place. By the time I was 12, I had lived in 7 different houses. Katona, New York, where I was born in a bedroom overlooking a huge field, although I don't remember much about it. Philmont, New York, where I shared a room with my older sibling. We ran barefoot through our yard. There was a beautiful garden in the front, one that my mother put so much love into. The last time my family felt truly whole. Farmington, New Mexico. We lived with my grandparents in the basement of their pristine house. The desert was my backyard, and I would explore, following tarantulas and finding treasures from nature. Farmington, New Mexico. My mom, my 2 siblings, and I moved into a small adobe house. There was an apricot tree in the dusty backyard that we loved to climb on. East Village, New York. 5 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, sirens constant, claustrophobic. It was hard to find time alone when my bedroom was shared with 2 other people. Washington Ave, upstate New York. A little blue house 1 block from the food co-op. I was so excited to finally have my own room. Wildflower Road, upstate New York. The house I have lived in for the past 6 years with my grandparents, my siblings, and my mom. One of the only houses I have ever really considered home. And now I'm moving again. It's hard not to have been able to give the proper goodbye to a beloved place that has been my home for the last 4 years. I have felt more attached to Buxton than any other place I have lived, because it truly is my home away from home. Buxton gave me the chance to settle. It's where I found people I love, people that have supported me. It's where I've truly learned so much, not only through classes, but by just living closely with a big extended family, by having thousands of daily interactions and spur-of-the-moment discussions, going on walks into town, or just lying in bed talking late into the night. Those are the moments that have made Buxton so special to me. I am still learning that sometimes you have the chance to have closure, and other times moments end more abruptly than you'd like. I like to imagine that there are some things that will always remain the same: a family together in one home, the tree that blooms in your front yard. Instead, I've come to realize that the only constant is that everything will always continue to evolve and change. I will too, as I move through a shifting landscape, but what I will always hold on to are the amazing people I have met and the connections I have made. These relationships and memories are in my heart and will last forever. Wherever I go, you will all be with me.
I appreciate this place. Thank you to those that have made my time at Buxton. I'm sure I benefited most of all from the individual relationships I've developed with both faculty and students here. Thank you to my close friends. You have helped to lead me through some of the toughest years of high school and have pushed me to really develop and change. I'm leaving high school self-assured, confident, open, and most importantly, happy. Thank you to Adrian and Henry for being rocks. Your consistency and care made this graduation possible for me. I hope to turn out like you both did. Thank you to Caitlin, someone I wish I'd started talking to sooner. Our conversations led me far, and I think I learned more from you than from some of my classes. I hope to continue talking often. Thank you to Jeremy and Katya, my parents. I know my high school struggles have been hard on all of us, and I appreciate your dedication to me. Hopefully that is all paid off now. The next step for me is a mystery, but I don't feel worried. I'm lucky to have a solid support system of friends I can rely on. My progress with my mental health feels monumental, and coming out of high school, I'm confident in my abilities to adapt, learn, and be better. Thank you.
I have dyslexia and ADHD, and learning was never easy for me. For all of my youth, I was hyper and inattentive. I never stopped to take a breath, and by the end of the day, I was exhausted. During grade school, I was pulled out of my classes to go over math and English. I had teachers constantly trying to explain adding and subtracting while I was twirling around in my own world. But as grades 5 through 7 got tougher, I got more frustrated at my inability to comprehend. I was expected to keep up with my peers and not get distracted, but I never seemed to be able to. Not only did that aggravate my teachers, but it also disheartened me. Throughout my years at Garrison School, I remember being so livid that I couldn't focus on my homework or even understand it, that I started to become physical. I would break pencils, trash my study area, and cry angry, bitter tears of self-loathing. I conceived the idea that I would never love learning, I wouldn't make it in high school, and I would drop out of college. I had no expectations for myself because whenever I tried, it just wasn't enough. I went to see Buxton during Spring Arts of 2016. I remember being sweaty and nervous. I saw the campus and I saw people laughing and being happy. I was scared to go to a school that was so different from anything I had ever experienced. But I felt something in my gut tell me, I need to go here, and I'll be damned if I ever leave. Freshman year was not a good year. I was stubborn, and I was caught up in my expectations for learning. I thought school was stupid, and I had no real reason to go. One day after the summer of freshman year, I realized that Buxton was quite different in their approach to learning. I appreciated that, and I still do. Each year I went to Buxton, I grew more accepting of learning and more patient with myself. By the end of junior year, I knew I had conquered my hatred of learning and that I would go to college. I see my future in a realistic light. I know I will be challenged in college, and I will go to lots of therapy sessions, but I'll never give up. My future holds graduate school in my eyes, and I'll fight to get there.
So I thought a lot about what this speech should say and what it should be about after I read it out loud to my senior class. I was reading it and it felt kind of wrong because I was crediting all of my personal growth to myself. So I made a new speech. This is take 2. And with proper dedication to my personal growth in mind, I have some people to call out. Kayla, you're my role model. You are the cool kid in the movie who sits in the corner and everyone comes and talks to them. Nothing and everything gets to you in a way that I wish it got to me every time something or nothing gets to me. Micah, you're the smartest person I think I'll ever meet. It's annoying sometimes, but I think I get why you're so cool. It turns out the smartest thing that any of us can do at any time is to just be nice and a cool guy. So thanks. Owen, I swear every time that I get you out of bed, or I try to trick you out of bed, is just because I want to hang out with you, because you're so cool, okay? It's a hard skill to learn, okay, getting you out of bed, but if it's never applicable in any other scenario, that's fine. I'm glad to have that skill, if just for you. Neve, I don't think I've met anyone more understanding than you. You just know whatever it is that's going on with me. I don't have to say anything. Whether it's a joke that no one gets or an existential crisis, you always know exactly when to not laugh. David, you came to this school with me. You went to this school, before me, but I consider you part of my class. And you've always been more of a friend than a teacher. And I think you're graduating with me, whether you stay at Buxton or not. Reed. I don't think we should hang out anymore. I'm gonna be honest here. I've never had more fun with anyone else, and I don't think I ever will, but we leave a trail of literal destruction everywhere we hang out. And that's the speech. My phone ran out of battery. I wasn't reading off this. The speech is dedicated to everyone that I can't fit in this 3 minutes that I have to make this speech. It's just there's so many people that make up the environment of Buxton, because that's it. That's all it ever was. Buxton was just a bunch of buildings and some acres of land. It could have been this prestigious masterpiece of a school, or it could have been a washed out dump. But that's the point. It never mattered, because if I'd met these people anywhere, in any scenario, I would have learned and grown just as much as anywhere else. So if there's something that I should dedicate my speech to, my chance to talk to the entire school or everybody that's graduating or whoever's looking at this video, if I have to dedicate that to something, then it's not going to be me. It's not going to be my school. It's you guys. So thanks. This is for you.
I never thought my time at Buxton will end this way. I guess it's pointless to say that because no one from our class could predict this pandemic will blow through the world. We all entered this year with everything mixed together from last year, including hope and motivation, trying to do better. Some of us, including me, imagined how we would be giving our speeches, one by one, in that church, and have a wonderful ending for the time we spent together at Buxton. I don't know about others, but the reality for me is that I am staring at the little black dot on the back of my phone while saying all this. I should have gone to the library on junior thesis night. I could have got that copy from Tunnel City. I will also probably got that stomach bug and be throwing up and on my bed all week. But that would have been worth it. I want to say hi to Sweeney. Your unicycle, your soda store, and your eyes. Do you still remember all the Mandarin I taught you? We all miss you here. Rest in peace. I want to go back to the junior camping night. We sat around fire playing games. Staring the flame, I beat everyone because I never wore deodorant in my life. No tents left, and Eric and I have to sleep in the van. Do all precious memories come with bad nights of sleep? I would love to go to the biolab again and write all of Like a Rolling Stone on the back of the whiteboard. I was so into Bob Dylan my freshman year, I did it off the top of my head. If I could do it again, it would be so much fun. Those who would clean the whiteboard would have a hard time. They wouldn't know it's me though. Really, I have no regrets. I prefer taking things as they are and working with them. In an online event hosted by my future college professor, he said, "The school will reopen sometime. If you're still having a hard time, think about this. Your grandparents' generation were sent to Europe and fight Nazis." Yeah, Every generation, each individual, has their struggles. But as I'm speaking and you're listening, at this moment, we have passed through everything that we once thought wouldn't work out. If there is one thing I learned in my time at Buxton, life is a journey. Starting from where I cannot decide, as to the destination I have no clue. But on the way, I have some control. How many students in the history of Buxton got to graduate in such a high-tech way? No one. No one but us. Can't deny there's something unique about it. For school, for ourselves, and for this tumultuous time. Someday, someone will ask me about my high school education and I could just say I graduated on YouTube. I hope they were confused and those clips will come back to me and refresh my high school years. Maybe this is that wonderful ending, isn't it?
I don't know. Except I do know a few things. I know that I love the environment, that I absolutely hate bees and snakes, and that my cat is quite possibly my favorite thing on earth, even though he's the most annoying cat I have ever met. I also know that I have grown so much since my freshman year, and that I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't gone to Buxton. I wouldn't have learned how to make ramen with a textbook and a hot water tap my freshman year. During my sophomore year, I would not have learned how sleepy black and white films make me. Last year, I would not have learned that living in the gatehouse during spring term is so wonderful because you can hear the frogs. And this year, I wouldn't have learned how plastic is made and how complex a topic environmentalism is. Those are such small things that I have learned, but small things add up to bigger things, and there are so many big life lessons I have learned. During my time at Buxton, I learned that you should always tell people you love that you love them, even if you are mad at them. I learned that it is okay to take up space, and your opinions and thoughts matter, even if people don't agree with them. I learned that you should leave space for other people too, and that it is important to have different people in conversations about issues that directly affect them. I have also learned how to respectfully debate and disagree with someone, and that you should listen to understand, not just listen to respond. I would not have learned all of these things during the past 4 years had I not gone to Buxton. Buxton allowed me to grow in so many different aspects, from the way that I carry and think about myself, to my political beliefs, to how I view learning. As I get ready to leave Buxton, I still don't know. I know that coming to Buxton, I was very naive, thinking that I knew so much when in reality, I didn't. As I have gotten older, I have started to realize that what I do know is so little compared to how much information there is in the world. I do know that I'm going to a college that only has 1 degree, and that I'm designing my own major. I know that I'm excited and ready to start college, but that I am sad I won't be able to have graduation in person. There is still so much for me to learn, so much space for me to grow, and so much unknown about where life will take me. I still don't know.
For most of my life, I never really listened to music. I had songs on the radio that I liked, and there were 1 or 2 artists that I listened to a lot, but it wasn't something I put much thought into. The first time I ever really looked for new music was when I started high school. I made my first playlist in my freshman year, and in my sophomore year I got really into hip-hop. However, it's during my 2 years at Buxton that my musical journey really began. I've learned about so many different artists and styles. I started listening to genres that I didn't even know existed. During the time when I was getting into music, I also started to do ceramics. The ceramics room became a safe haven for me. It was where I went to work, play, and cry. And during all of this, I was constantly backed by new soundtrack after new soundtrack. As my musical horizons expanded, I kept coming back to the ceramics building with my speaker to listen to some new artist as I worked. From my discovery of jazz with Herbie Hancock, the Sons of Kemet, and the Art Ensemble of Chicago, to my deeper dive into lesser-known hip-hop artists like Quelle Chris and Open Mike Eagle. It was just as I was starting to really see how broad the horizon was, just when I was starting to see how much there was to discover, when the rug was pulled out from under me. COVID-19 struck, and the year was over. There weren't any goodbyes, and my time working in the ceramics building was done. Pieces were left on the shelves, never to be finished. And in the absence of ceramics, I found that music started to leave too. My pace of listening to new music went from a sprint to a screeching halt. What was before up to 10 new albums a month had become just 2 albums in the last 3 months. Every time I try to discover new music, my unconscious thoughts jump to the idea of listening to it in the ceramics building. And then I remember that I won't be able to do that anymore. This thought, I realize, I need to escape from. I shouldn't turn the loss of one safe space into the loss of 2. It is because of this realization that I have started listening to new music again. Because even though I have lost something important to me, I shouldn't let that take away from all there is left to discover.
In my first year at Buxton, I was placed into Kyle's sophomore English class. I'm always thankful for that class because it introduced me to one of the best teachers I've ever had, and, in my opinion, the greatest book ever written, Joseph Heller's Catch-22. I learned a lot about the world from it, and it's helped me with a lot of my struggles over the past 3 years. This is everything Catch-22 taught me about life. Dunbar taught me to appreciate every passing moment. Life is short, so cling to it. A second ago, I was stepping into Buxton, and now, in the blink of an eye, I'm leaving the place I called home. Suddenly, I'm a brand new person. I'm older, wiser, and I've lived through a lot more hardship and joy. It went by fast, and I'll miss those moments I spent not appreciating the fact that I am simply alive. Or it taught me to have fun. Be curious, enjoy things, and don't ever let the world get you down. Don't wipe that smile off your face for anyone, and when things are hard, when you're hurt or afraid, laugh about it. It's your life, so don't you dare take it too seriously, and don't you dare bow to the expectations of others. I've often in my life been underestimated, and I've let myself become the person people thought of me, and that was a waste of time. Prove the people who believe in you right, and prove those who don't how wrong they are. Nately showed me to be patient with the people you love. Love isn't convenient, life doesn't have good timing, and people are incredibly complicated. It doesn't mean you can't find your people. It just means it's going to be hard, and you have to be patient. Good things and good people are out there. All they need is a little time. Through Mud, I learned that no one's really gone. People leave us every day, and it's unfair. The people around us won't always be there, and often it doesn't make sense. Loss is confusing, and plenty of the people we lose will leave without the chance to live up to what they could have been. Sometimes we won't even have the time to say goodbye. Despite that, they won't be truly gone. They'll leave things behind, reminders of who they were and everything they did, and no one has the right to take that from you. Hungry Joe taught me to express how utterly terrified I am while I still can. Life is as scary as it is short, so let everyone know how afraid you really are. Growing up is scary. Leaving Buxton is scary. No matter how excited I may be about moving on and experiencing life, I'm still completely afraid. But you know what? That's okay. I'm allowed to be afraid, and why shouldn't I be? Yossarian taught me to always question authority. If the rules are unfair, defy them and never accept the unacceptable. There is no shame in running away. If the game is rigged, there's no point playing. Self-preservation is the highest priority. You can't solve anything if you can't help yourself first. He taught me to be mindful of the people you love because they won't be with you forever. Cherish the times you spend because it could be the last together. The past doesn't stay in the past. Every moment you live will be with you for the rest of your life, so spend that time in a way you'll want to remember. Most importantly, Yossarian taught me to never be the victim of circumstance. This is your life, and nothing can take that away from you.
I've been at Buxton a long time, and I've made a lot of friends throughout the years. Those friends have helped to influence and shape who I am. I've had many ups and downs, but like others, I've had friends, family, and teachers to help me through it all. At the beginning of this year, Timothy picked out the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for our traditional first night movie. There's a song in this movie by Lil Wayne and XXXTentacion, and it's called Not Scared of the Dark. Throughout this year, this song would pop up on my Spotify while on shuffle, and no matter what I was going through, it seemed to make sense to me. The lyrics start with, "I'm not scared, of the dark. I'm not running, running, running. No, I'm not afraid of the fall. I'm not scared, not at all. Why would a star, ever be afraid of the dark? I felt like this song encompassed how I felt about moving on to my next chapter and how I am a star and I shouldn't be scared about my next phase, even though Buxton is where I felt most comfortable. But as I listen to the song now, I realize it has much more meaning. Lil Wayne starts his rap by saying, I ain't never scared, I ain't never horrified. I just look down at my Rolex and it says it's the darkest time. Sadly, a lot of people would say right now is the darkest time. But Lil Wayne says that he's not scared and he's never horrified. So I don't think that we should be either. We're the class of 2020 and people are looking at us as that light, that star. And even though a lot of things feel uncertain and I know that I feel like I'm walking through the dark, I know that I'm a star and everyone in the class of 2020 is a star too. So let's do what stars do and shine our way into our future.
I will miss knowing that I will always have Buxton as a second home. Buxton feels like home because of how close you get with your friends. While attending, you end up developing a sort of pseudo-family that you can turn to during the academic year. Even now, as a day student, when I would stay on campus, I always knew that I could find one of my friends to hang out with. And that's a comforting feeling to be losing. It's comforting to know that there are always other people you know and can talk with around at all times. Living in the dorms at Buxton for my first 2 years could be really fun at times. One time, freshman year, the dorm supervisors planned an activity that happened after bed check called Nerf or Nothing. The entire dorm proceeded to erupt in battle for the 2 hours until David told us we had to be quiet. I loved working in the kitchen. I particularly enjoyed making breakfast in the mornings while hanging out with my friends and watching soccer. I enjoy cooking with my friends in the morning because we would have fun and joke around while accomplishing something that helps the entire community in the end. I really enjoyed playing Frisbee each spring. Not as many people played Frisbee as soccer. My junior year, many more of my friends from outside Frisbee joined, which made the entire season a lot more fun. I loved playing Frisbee at school because I enjoyed how relaxed it felt. I loved competitive sports, but I also loved the camaraderie of the team, and I felt a great sense of accomplishment with each point I scored. It was really nice to be able to rely on Frisbee as a way to unwind at the end of the day. I do feel that I'm not only prepared, but also ready to be moving on to college. Buxton provided me with a good platform to learn and grow into who I am as a person. Because Buxton is so small, you know everyone at the school. But despite the school's small size, you can still find so many amazing and different people. I have so many interesting and unique friends that I never would have thought about talking to if I had gone to a larger school. I also tried things I never would have tried, like soccer and photography. These activities gave me an outlet to express myself and led to me meeting new people. I'm looking forward to finding my new home, wherever it may be.
My high school career has been less than appealing to most. I've bounced around between 3 high schools and a wilderness program. For a lot of my teenage years, I didn't feel complete. My freshman year was definitely the worst. I went to a relatively small school, and I felt myself slipping through the cracks. I would hold in all my feelings at school and be constantly angry with my mom when I got home. I would blame her for the trouble at school. Anxiety was a big factor of this, as I would overthink social situations and become too scared to say or do anything. My mom knew that home wasn't the best place for me, so I was sent to a wilderness program in the Oregon desert. I like to joke about it and talk about how it wasn't that bad, but while I was there, it was that bad. Away on the other side of the country, I met a lot of interesting characters and worked on building my own character. 10 weeks later, I learned that I was moving on to a long-term treatment center. Again, I like to share crazy stories, like how my roommate jokingly zip-tied most of my belongings together, but it was probably the most challenging time of my life. I met a lot of great people and made friends I still talk with to this day, which is special to me. We're all there for similar reasons and made the most out of a pretty crappy time in our life. I also had a wonderful therapist who really pushed me. She helped me work with my social anxiety. I would have to do anxiety provoking tasks that I would normally avoid to build confidence in myself. After 13 months in becoming a better me, I went to Buxton. I joined halfway through the year as a junior. I've definitely made some solid friendships that I hope to keep for the rest of my life. Buxton is really a place where I can be who I want to be. However, at Buxton, as everyone is aware of, people complain. I'd be lying if I said I didn't also complain about Buxton. There's obviously things that don't go 100% right, or rules that seem unreasonable. But it's important to keep some perspective. If I had to give any advice, it would be to accept. I obviously understand that acceptance isn't as easy as just saying it, but it's vital to learn how. It takes practice. I think the easiest way to start is by understanding what you're grateful for. Everyone at Buxton is privileged to be there and deserves it. Make the most of it. Once I understood what I was grateful for, I could put myself into perspective and realize that not every little piece of drama is important. I wish I had been able to be here longer. What I've learned is that no matter what Buxton as an institution is like, I'm grateful for the people around me. I'm grateful for my class, no matter how foolish we can sometimes sound. I'm grateful for my friends and my family. Despite the rocky high school life I've been through, I'm glad to have finally graduated and be proud of myself for that.
I came to Buxton when I was 16 with my dad. He walked around and said, "Wow, this is such a nice place for you to study." I don't know anything about Buxton before I came, and I even imagined that I might go to the Chinatown during the weekend. He asked me before I applied schools, "What kind of school do you want to go to, Eric?" I said, 40 minutes drive to Boston or New York City. Other than that, I don't care. Before we got on a plane to the States, he said, "Eric, you will like this school, I'm sure." Well, he lied to me. I started to know my dad when I was 9, when I went to a junior high boarding school in China. And I began to break the school rules. Of course, I was a problem kid, and my dad came to school many times to talk to my teachers. My teachers always said, "Eric is a smart kid, but he doesn't know what he's doing." I came back home every Friday with my weekly report letter, and my name was never on the red board, which is the good student list. My test rank was always stuck in the middle, because to sit in a classroom and listen to the lecture was painful for me. Instead, I preferred to walk around in the campus with my camera and participate in many clubs. However, the only standard that teacher to evaluate students was test scores. So they prevented me from going to club activities because my test score was not good enough. My dad wanted me to change, so he decided to send me to another country. He asked me where I want to go to, and I said, "I don't care as long as it's on the Earth. You see, SpaceX haven't launched yet." Then I came to Buxton in January. My dad went to the airport right after lunch, and he got a free upgrade. I guess because he made the right decision to send me to Buxton, and the airline gave him a gift to celebrate. He asked me who I want to be in the future, and I said, "Scientist." He said, "Great, then do it and study hard." He asked me the same question in my sophomore year, and I answered, "Well, I want to be an airline pilot." He said, "Awesome, sounds good. I support it, my son." He asked me again, a half year later, and I said, "Wow, I just realized physics is very cool. So I may learn nuclear physics in college." He replies, "No, they won't give you the visa because you might be a spy." My dad always supported me to do what I wanted to do. Unlike some Chinese parents who will ask their child to learn a specific major. He doesn't care where I'm going to study now, as long as on the Earth. By the way, SpaceX launched. He taught me to think a question creatively to raise above mediocrity. He is not good at expressing himself, but I can feel his passion for me through his behavior. I love you, Dad. It's hard to organize my high school life experience and my thought in one speech. But my dad and school helped me a lot in the past 4 years. I understand how to be responsible to myself, use creative way to think through the questions, and finally know who I want to be in the future. The next step of my journey is skate more. And the skate more slogan is, creative thought matters. Thank you.
I am scared of the dark. I've been scared of the dark since I can remember. I think maybe it has something to do with not knowing what's going on. You see, in addition to being scared of the dark, as in the absence of light, I've also never been at ease with what darkness represents. The idea of not knowing what's going on, or not knowing what's going to happen, makes me uncomfortable. Unfortunately, that's life. Sometimes you can't see, and sometimes you simply don't know. I live in a place with streetlights, so the dark's not hard to avoid when I'm home. But at Buxton, there are only lights on certain parts of the path. Not on the hill up to the arts building, and not if you make a beeline from the main house to the barn. Not on the way to the theater, and those lights to the library are eerie and flickering, and quite frankly, they scare me more than the dark. The way the shadows end up being cast on the trees, and those big wooden wolves and people watching, just barely hidden on the edges of the path while you walk up that hill. What's not to be wary of? Well, now we're in a time where it is a challenge to find the light, and the feeling is similarly uneasy. The uncertainty is far greater for other people, but I feel it too. All year I was living with the uncertainty of where I'd be next fall. I already couldn't see what a future without my Buxton family would look like. Now, of course, there's so much more that I don't know. So much more darkness on the path and between the lights. But the thing is, I've walked up and down all those paths so many times that I called them home, and I never got eaten by a bear. I never saw any wolves on that very short walk from the library to the main house, or the main house to the gatehouse. In fact, sometimes, when the moon was bright enough that I could see my shadow, I would walk on the part of the path that had no lights on purpose. When the moon was that bright, I often walked in the dark woods by myself, and that was fine too. So I figure, all this uncertainty and darkness will turn out all right. I figure if I can walk alone at night in the woods, then I can certainly go a few months without knowing what's going to happen. That doesn't mean I'll be at ease with it, and it certainly doesn't mean I won't try my hardest to plan and calculate as much of it as I can. However, I'm hoping that in the future, I'll be able to walk comfortably into things unknown.
I actually had a pretty good idea of what I wanted the speech to be all about. I knew I wanted it to center on my personal growth. I knew I wanted to talk about what I've been through and what I've learned in high school. But for some reason, I really didn't want it to be able to be labeled as political. However, a friend of mine gave me some words to live by this summer. The personal is political. So, bearing that in mind, and bearing in mind the events of the past few weeks, my speech must be different from how I originally planned it. As I speak to you from my sister's home in Millis, the country's on fire. Across the nation, people have taken to the streets to fight passionately for the causes of human rights and Black liberation. The chaos we're seeing today reflects centuries of dysfunction and suffering inflicted upon Black people by truly evil systems and institutions. In 2008, I celebrated the election of our first Black president alongside the rest of the country. I still remember the jubilation of my Black church. I still remember how for years my family kept the flyer of a young black-haired and grinning Barack Obama that we got that Sunday. I still remember the warm, tingly sensation I felt watching the inauguration. In school, my education on race relations in America followed the typical curriculum of liberal states. We learned that people own people for 200 years in this country until Abraham Lincoln, honest and benevolent, gifted Black people with freedom. We were taught that the greatest injustices of the Jim Crow era were about water fountains, and that they were healed decades ago. We were taught that Malcolm X was a violent extremist, and that the Black Panthers were the Black equivalent of the Klan. We were taught that in one speech, MLK convinced white America to change, and that racism ended that day. My own life made me skeptical of that idea. But I was not yet aware of the wider systems that were at work. So, in spite of myself, 8-year-old me bought into the notion that racism was dead. It was not long before reality slapped me awake. In April 2010, I became an uncle. I distinctly remember the first time I got to hold my nephew, how I looked at his little face and took a silent, solemn oath to protect him. My immigrant family was poor, but the neighborhood we lived in was safe. Still, that was my first thought upon seeing my baby nephew. I was acutely aware of the effect my complexion had on my ability to move through the world safely. At the time, I was still trying to live in a post-racial America. My instincts lived in reality, and they clung to centuries-old Black fear. A few months later, in October, my fears were vindicated. My church community, the same one that had celebrated Obama's election in glee, was grief-stricken that fall. A young man named DJ Henry was shot by the police in the town where he went to college. Like mine, his family had been going to the church for years. DJ was the picture of a respectable young Black man. He was a devout Christian from a good family. He was raised in a comfortable suburb. He was an amazing student athlete. He had been recruited to play football at Pace University in New York and was on course to get his degree. He was everything society tells young Black boys to aspire to. And he was killed in his own car for reaching for his wallet. After his limp body was pulled from the car, the police handcuffed him and laid him face down in the street, where he bled out and died. His death did not receive widespread media attention. There were no protests, no riots. It made a few national headlines before everyone moved on. The same cop who killed him was later named the town's police officer of the year. This is probably the first time you're hearing of DJ. And if his story makes you sad, if it makes you angry and upset, good. I was 10 when this happened. The day I realized his murderers would not face justice, I felt anguish as though he were my own blood. But somehow, astoundingly, I was not surprised. I understood that the officer's word was above the truth. I understood implicitly the contract I had signed upon entering American society. It was all a reflection. It all reinforced how fragile Black life was, how quickly and simply I could be wiped from the earth. How discreetly. I spent a lot of time thinking about how many DJ Henrys there were all over our post-racial country, stretching back decades, centuries even. 2 years later, Trayvon was murdered, and I got my hopes up. This is different from DJ, I thought. His murderer was not a cop. Trayvon was a child. The story got an immense amount of press. You couldn't go anywhere without reading or hearing his name or seeing his young, beaming face. I was sure justice would be served. But I don't have to tell you the rest. After Trayvon, there was Mike Brown, and after him, a seemingly endless string of racist murders, mainly perpetrated by the police. Every time, I built up my hopes, only to watch them burn like the 5th precinct in Minneapolis. I can't quite keep track of when I abandoned that hope. During that time, white people, still caught in the subterfuge of a race-blind America, often commented on how they felt they were watching the return of racism. But I knew better. I knew that the only thing that had changed was technology, and that technology allowed us all to see just how many DJ Henrys there were. DJ was 20 when he died. I will be 20 in a few days. Like him, I have been well regarded in my community, and I'm going to a college far from home. I even got into Pace. I'm not going, and had I remembered that that was the place he died, I probably wouldn't have even applied. As much as I try to rebel against respectability politics, I am still to some the very picture of a respectable young black man. But I know enough to know that that will not save me, that I still have to fight every day for us. Every time I see a black person has been murdered yet again by those who supposedly serve and protect, I think of DJ, but not just him. I think of my twin brother who shares my dark complexion but has about 4 inches and 40 pounds on me. I think of my sisters who pretty much raised me. I think of my brother-in-law who travels all around for work. I think of my bright and expressive nephew and how his energetic and enthusiastic nature can be twisted into hostility by the world we live in. He just turned 10, and my sister has had 2 more children in the past decade, a 3-year-old girl and a bouncing baby boy. It was for all of them that I took up the cause of social justice in high school, and for them that I continue. When I was 15, I swore to myself that they would come of age in a country that was different from the one I had been subjected to. Some days I don't even think that's possible, but it's a mission I'm willing to die for.
I've been saying my goodbyes to Buxton for a long time. They must have been little ones, to my first room, to the cows, to living in the main house. There have been plenty of larger goodbyes too, like all the ones I've said to everyone who's passed through Buxton in the last 3 years. This past year, everything has felt kind of like a goodbye. To cheering during a soccer game, to making waffles in the kitchen, to slipping on the path up to the arts building when it's covered in ice and snow. The last day we were all on campus together, I said goodbye to having fires in the billiards room. I'm glad I did, because even though I didn't know how much I was saying goodbye to that afternoon, I still took the time to be thankful for the fire, playing games by it, making s'mores there on snow day, and hauling wood in the rain. And really, Buxton is so tied together by these little things that I actually was saying goodbye to all of it without realizing. I like to sing a song. It's called The Parting Glass, and it's traditionally sung at all kinds of goodbyes. Oh, of all the money that I had, I spent it in good company, and of all the harm that I done, alas, it was to none but me, and all I've done
parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Of all the comrades that I had, they are sorry for my going away. And of all the sweethearts that I had, they wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I must go and you must not, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night and joy be to you all.
Graduation can be a somber occasion. It can be a joyous one. It can feel bittersweet and exultant and silly and profound all at once. Momentous moments bring up strong feelings of every kind. And there's no question that this is a big moment, and there's no question that the mixture of feelings we are all having is more varied than usual. Happy to have achieved this incredible milestone, sad to have it happen under such bizarre circumstances, proud to be taking these next steps, grieving for the Buxton senior spring you weren't able to have. The faculty are right there with you. But listening to these speeches and thinking about you as a class, the amazing, resilient class of 2020, I've been realizing how much we get to take away from each other, even though we've had to spend the last few months apart. This senior class has created a legacy that will last at Buxton and within all of our hearts. Kayla has taught us what it means to live life vividly, passionately, and compassionately. I know I will be forever affected by her depth of feeling, her fierce devotion to her friends, and her astounding creativity. Asili has shown us what it means to grow and evolve and mature while maintaining the essential fire that defines her. Will any of us ever forget watching her dance at Spring Arts? Will any of us ever forget her voice and her words calling us rightly to account? In fact, evolving and maturing is a theme of this class. Look at Lila, who transformed from someone for whom school was a torment to a young woman poised to take college by the reins and then go beyond to graduate school. Look at Julian, who used a difficult passage through high school as a way to acquire perspective and equilibrium. Look at Eric, who's so utterly different from the kid he was freshman year, but still essentially himself. Look at Giovanni, who made the leap from Christianity he grew up with to a joyful embrace of Judaism. This class has savored their experiences, whether they've been wonderful or hard. Bella reminds us of all the small things that make up a big life. Georgia and Jackson remind us of what makes Buxton home for so many of us: the camaraderie, the stability, the shared moments. Owen shows us what it means to be a true intellectual, a person who treasures knowledge and loves to soak it up from any source at any time. Junja reminds us of the personal connections that define Buxton, and Theo and Coe remind us that simple thanks to those who have helped us along the way can provide us with profound clarity about what really matters in our lives. I'm struck by the courage of the class of 2020 that they've displayed over and over. Sophia and Moika and Tallulah and Kiara, each in their own way, talk about being afraid of the dark, of not knowing, of realizing that reality is so much more complicated and unpredictable than a fairy tale. But each of these young women, in her own way, shows us a path forward through the darkness, draws our attention to the fact that love and connection and experience can make that path visible after all. At this moment in our history, I'm not sure we could ask for better or more wisdom or advice. Speaking of wisdom, I want to acknowledge someone who is essentially also graduating from Buxton this June. David Denhard, our amazing, indefatigable music teacher and the stealth guru of Buxton School, is retiring. David has served as an example to all of us of what it means to teach what you're passionate about, to care for and nurture students, and to enrich the lives of those around you with beauty, creativity, and care. David's light touch, his steady presence, and his steadfast dedication to generation after generation of Buxton students will be remembered and cherished by all of us who've been lucky enough to know him, be taught by him, and to work alongside him. Thank you, David, for everything. The class of 2020 is graduating into a strange world and in a critical moment, moving the world to a better place for the environment in terms of the pandemic and towards a more equitable and less racist future will take perseverance and creativity. Chris's speech feels like a poem to me, and I think we will need poetry to feed us on the long journey forward. Nola's voice is like a gift to us all, clear as a bell and meaning every word. And Brian's speech is the cry from the heart that we all need to hear if we're going to do right by this class, by all of our young people, by our communities, and by our country. So I want to say to the class of 2020, thank you. Thank you for enriching our lives and showing us what it means to live fully and freely. Thank you for sharing your voices, your art, your perspectives, your pain, and your accomplishments with us. Thank you for helping us see those flickers of light that will guide us on the path to a more just, more compassionate, and more loving future. I am pleased to confer Buxton diplomas upon the class of 2020. Brian Opari Asari, Owen Bjork, Sophia M. Bond, Kiara Elizabeth Carmen, Moika Jacqueline Carol Jean-Louis, Giovanni Gordon Clark, Coe Durley, Jackson Young Fina, Kayla Flaherty Overshone, Lila Ann Grace Jansky, Asili Nebet Het Nadira Johnson, Theodore King, Georgia Rose McDonald, Julian Paul Minigello, Nola Lucia Muscatello, Tallulah India Rose Sorst, Isabella Sandra Rain Waldorf, Junja Yan, Juan Yi, Jinju Zhu,